One thing to remember about site modifiers is that the order that you add them to your file is important. And so the first thing that you want to start with is any known elevations or any elevations that cannot change. And so for our example that we're looking at right now, we know both the elevation of the sidewalk as well as the elevation to that pathway that goes to the entrance. So we're going to start by drawing those first. You could use the pad site modifier that we've already looked at, but there's another way to add a site modifier to the file that is even easier, and that is by using the Hardscape tool. So I'm going to come over here and select the Hardscape tool, and then let me come over here and look at the preferences and make sure everything is set up correctly. Here under the Draw 3D pane, set the 3D type to Slab. Then click on the Main Area Components button. Set the datum to Top of Component. This means the elevation shown in the Object Info palette will be the elevation at finish grade, meaning the top of the concrete rather than the bottom. This is the setting you'll use the majority of the time. Next, select row 1 of the components and click the Edit button. Here we can set the thickness of the material. This must be a positive number. This is also where the texture is controlled. You can either use the object class or manually assign a texture. The section fill and section pen control the attributes for the section elevations. Even if you don't plan on creating section elevations, the section fill is an important setting to pay attention to. If this style is set to none, the hardscape will be invisible in 3D. There are 2 fill attribute settings that cannot be set to none in order for the hardscape to show correctly in 3D. One is the section fill in the component settings, which we're looking at here. The other is the fill attributes for the object. If both of those are set to solid, it will display correctly. Change the section fill to solid, then click OK. Click OK again. Before we go back to the drawing area, there's one other setting we need to take a look at, and that's the site modifier pane. Just like we set the datum to the top, we also select modifier at top the majority of the time. This means the terrain model will meet the top of the concrete as opposed to the bottom of the concrete. Click OK and let's add the hardscape. Before we begin drawing, make sure the default attributes fill is set to solid. Let's review the settings for the hardscape in the Object Info palette. Scroll down to the Draw 3D section. Here we can see the 3D type that we set to Slab using the tool preferences. We can also edit the thickness. Remember when we set the datum to top, and I said that that means the elevation shown in the Object Info palette will be the elevation at finished grade, meaning the top of the concrete rather than the bottom. This is the setting I was referring to. The elevation for our sidewalk is 0, so no need to change it, but if we did need to change it, this is where we would do that. Next, we can make changes to the main area components. This is where we set the datum to top, assign the texture, and set the section fill to solid. The other section we want to take a look at is the site modifier section. This is another setting we chose while we were setting up the tool preferences, but the position and type of the modifier can be controlled here. Those are the relevant settings when including a site modifier with the hardscape object. Alright, so let's pop this up in 3D and take a look at our sidewalk. So right now you're seeing lines kind of going across the sidewalk, and what that's called is moraying. And so a moray happens anytime you have 2 objects that are sitting at the same elevation, and the software doesn't know which one we should actually be looking at. So we get kind of this scratched line work effect. But that just means that I need to update my site model because using that slab modifier as part of the hardscape is going to change where that site model sits. And so I'll no longer have this moraine conflict. So I'm just going to come over here and select the site model. And then in the object info palette, I'll come over and I will click update. And you can see that by updating that, it got rid of the moraine. So I haven't really made much change to my site model. The elevation's still, if not exactly, pretty close to what it was before, but I now have a sidewalk that I can view and my elevation is correct. So now that my hardscape is in the drawing, I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to add a pathway that goes up to the front of the house. Now I know that we're going to add stairs to this later on, so I'm going to just tell you, and I'm looking for where the elevation changes right here. So these green lines, that's the existing topography of the site. So I basically want to go to that green line, and then I'm going to hit the tab key, and for this delta X field right here, I know that I want my pathway to be 6 feet wide, so I'm just going to enter that in, and then enter one more time to place the rectangle in the file. And then what I need to do is, I know that I'm going to have stairs that come up from the sidewalk to this pathway right here. So my tread is 15 inches, and I know that I'm going to want to take away 15 inches of walkway right here in my path in order to get my site modifiers to work. So I'm going to come over here, and for this rectangle, I'm going to come to the height field, and then I'm going to subtract 15 inches right there. And the next step is to come up to the landmark menu, create objects from shape. This time for object type, I'm going to do a hardscape. And then I'm going to both delete the original source shape as well as show the properties dialog box. And then we're going to walk through these steps again. So yes, it's a boundary. Yes, the main area class is material concrete. For the draw 3D, I want a slab modifier top. Thickness, we'll keep that the same. So it all looks good. I'll go ahead and click OK. And then once again, I need to come down here and get rid of the slope definition. So I'll change that to none. And for the elevation, because I know that this area up here, once I get to the top of those stairs, this area up here is 3 feet. So I need to change that elevation to 3 feet. And then let's come over here and look at it in 3D. So once again, I'm seeing the moraine. That just means that I need to update the site model. I also have the candy cane striping. So come over, select the site model, and click on Update. And so now I have a pathway that goes to the front of my house as well as a sidewalk. And I have added my slab modifiers through the hardscape.